Under President Tsai Ing-wen's pro-independence administration, there's been limited engagement with China over the past 8 years. With China being Taiwan's largest trading partner, tense cross-strait relations have taken a toll on the island's economy and trickled down to bread-and-butter issues for Taiwanese. These days, Andy Chu only leaves office after the sun sets. He works for the Taiwan Tourism Board, promoting the island to Japanese clients.
大概下半年开始，可能到今年，就是整个景气非常的糟糕，就是疫情一结束，然后就是电子业状况都不是很好，半导体状况也不是非常好。可是跳过来，现在观光业就反而又是另一种，疫情结束要开始要起来了。
He now lives just outside Taipei in Banqiao, close enough to get to work within an hour.
那当然，你说相对南部的生活，北部的开销是真的蛮高的，会确实有这个感觉，可能光是房租啊、物价。
Andy is among some 600,000 young Taiwanese from across the island who moved to Taipei for better prospects. It's the business hub, accounting for over 57% of total foreign investment in Taiwan. The island's semiconductor industry is a major economic driver, with the most competitive wages. The others, not so much. And a local recruitment platform found that 90% of office workers were unhappy with their wages, the highest in 5 years. Taiwan's semiconductor industry isn't just a main pillar of the island. It's strategically important in an ongoing global tech race. And Taiwan's chip giant, TSMC, dominates the chip industry. It's the key to powering AI, jets, and iPhones. The ongoing US-China rivalry has hit Taiwan's economy hard. Cross-straits production fell following US export restrictions on high-tech goods to mainland China. And Taiwan's own exports to China and Hong Kong dropped 26% in the first half of 2023 compared to the same period in the previous year. So there's a greater sense of urgency to accelerate diversification now.
The government also tried to identify the emerging TSMC for the future, including biotechnology and also agriculture-based technology, circular industry, and also everything regarding green. For example, we are very strong in terms of providing equipment and also total solution for charging station for electronic vehicle, and that is a very potential sector for Taiwan in the next 5 to 10 years.
Ms. Xi says diversification also applies to new locations, as TSMC expands its footprint to the southern city of Kaohsiung. It's a linchpin to job growth across the island. But with few other immediate growth sectors, post-pandemic recovery is slow. In October, the IMF lowered Taiwan's GDP forecast for 2023 to 0.8% amid global economic slowdown. Youth unemployment remained high at 11.2% as of last May. So our presidential candidates continue to make the case for who can best handle relations with China, the island's youth are hoping the campaigns will focus more on their needs.
"27-year-old Sora Kong is currently renting at this apartment in Taipei. But she will soon have to turn in her keys come February when her landlord reclaims the property. She's packing up for good, despite being based in Taipei for work.
以这个工作的经历来跟年纪来说，其实要在台北买房太困难，就是你在这里没有任何的资源，然后你要在这边定居成家立业的话，其实负担真的太高了。就像我们打听，就是这一间卖的价格大概是1380万。
Miss Kong will be moving back to her hometown in Taichung. There, she's found a slightly more affordable apartment at around $250,000. One real estate agent has also seen more youth shifting out of Taipei for the same reasons.
照国际的所谓的房价所得比来看的话，应该合理的比值会是在6到8倍，但是以台北市来说，已经来到了16倍，也确实对于年轻人购物产生相当大的压力。那也可以观察到，在这一波的所谓资金潮之下的话，比如说台北之外，可能像最早新北，那现在有一些人他们转去桃园，那我们有看过，甚至于比如说从新竹、台中到台北来通勤上班的民众，其实也有陆续的出现。
Ms. Xi says the price hikes began in 2016. In Taipei alone, average property prices rose by 20% this year, compared to 8 years ago. And in Kaohsiung, around 50%. Home to the world's largest contract chip maker, TSMC, Hsinchu saw the biggest jump as prices doubled. It's largely driven by Taiwan's growth in the semiconductor industry, leading to a surge in demand for property there. Housing prices in Taiwan are among the highest globally, but wages remain one of the lowest compared to other advanced cities. According to recent data by the Labor Ministry, 70% of Taiwanese youths are earning between $880 to $945 per month. Owning a property in Taipei is beyond reach for them, while renting a unit remains a struggle. There's growing disillusionment, especially among the young here, as they continue to face difficulty finding an affordable place to live in. And this will likely affect the way they decide which presidential candidate they would like to vote for come 13 January.
The young voters this time will not only vote for their identity, I think, in a significant sense, that their ballot will vote on their own interests, their life, their cost of living, and the generation justice carries a pretty heavy weight.
The ruling Democratic Progressive Party has promised to build 200,000 units of social housing. But to date, less than half has been built. DPP's presidential candidate William Lai has promised to ramp up construction and provide further rental subsidies.
That will be coupled with another 500,000 of rental housing that will be put under rental subsidies. So taken all together, there will be over 1 million pieces of property that will be under some sort of government subsidy to provide better housing opportunities for either young people or for disadvantaged people and elderly people throughout society.
On the other hand, opposition Kuomintang candidate Hou Yu-ih laid out his plans, which include allowing people to take out a maximum bank loan of almost US $480,000 and not having to make a down payment when buying a home. As for Ms. Kong, she's not convinced, and she hopes to see better solutions.
如果你已经有执政的这一段时间呢，是不是换一个人做会比较好？因为你已经有8年的时间了嘛。来吃饭吃饭。
Meanwhile, a new future awaits in Taichung, where her new home will be ready in 2 years.
Cross-strait relations at the forefront of Taiwan's upcoming presidential polls. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party continues to advocate self-reliance, but with Beijing restricting the diplomatic space, it has become increasingly difficult for the island to explore new markets, prompting a fresh foreign policy approach.
It's gone from providing economic aid to hosting sponsored visits or unofficial engagements with foreign parliamentary delegations. In the past 2 years alone, Taiwan has already received over 100 of them. Most came after then US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited the island in August 2022. Under Tsai Ing-wen's administration, the island lost 9 diplomatic allies to China, over promises of more development aid from Beijing. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, has had to switch up its foreign policy approach in a fast-shrinking diplomatic space dictated by China.
I think the DPP administration is working hard in order to transform Taiwan's foreign policy or diplomatic practice because of the pressure of the Beijing authorities. So I think in a way it's good to see such a diplomatic adjustment in order to make more people able or willing to visit Taiwan.
Cross-strait relations have a profound impact on Taiwan's global economic standing. While the DPP has been preaching economic self-reliance for years, it's proving difficult. That's despite Western allies pushing hard to include the island in major regional trade pacts and international meetings.
Taiwan cannot move away from the Chinese mainland, so Taiwan's economy, Taiwan's security has, been very closely related to the Chinese mainland. Due to the difficulty in cross-strait political dialogue and the mutual non-recognition of sovereignty, it has become extremely difficult for Taiwan to participate in these regional blocs. Without this political dialogue, then Taiwan's participation is very limited.
DPP's presidential candidate William Lai says he's open to dialogues with Beijing, but the possibility remains remote after he flatly rejected the 1992 consensus. It's essentially the One China principle, which Beijing insists forms the basis of any engagement between both sides. On the other hand, the Kuomintang and Taiwan People's Party are keen to restart high-level talks and explore trade agreements with Beijing. Taiwan's ambition to retain and pursue allies is a desire for legitimacy and security. After all, increasing isolation leaves it more vulnerable to geopolitical risks.
At the heart of every presidential election in Taiwan is the question, how will the next leader navigate cross-strait relations, especially as geopolitical tensions are at an all-time high? Now, as it is, the elections are happening at the same time. Both Ukraine and Gaza have turned into battlegrounds. So now it's not a question of whether Taiwan should, but how it can restart talks with China.
我觉得这个当然还是要看那个对岸的状况了哈。当然我相信习近平现在要出手的机会当然是比较小，我觉得当然比较小，因为如同我刚刚讲，他内部的状况非常的多哈。但是当他进入到第4任的任期，或者是他内部的状况越来越严峻，或者是国外对台湾的涉入越来越强烈的情况之下，他必须要做出回应。
DPP has stressed that the island is not seeking war with China, but that it needs a strong defense as a deterrence. President Tsai extended compulsory military service to a year to boost combat readiness. And across the island, civil emergency response workshops like this have sprung up. Forward Alliance was formed in 2020 to gear Taiwanese up for disaster response. A spike in demand in recent times indicates an increase in public awareness.
两岸之间都是选举上面的一个很重要的议题。近年来，就是譬如说有这样子民间团体的后盾计划，那能够让我们在意识有这个危机的时候，有一个对应在心理上面和就是技术上面具备某一定的能量。那这样子的话，基本上就是虽然说一样会担心，但是至少自己可以做些什么事情。
如果真的有冲突发生的话，那势必会有很多的伤患嘛。那我觉得有学过这个之后，一定是会有帮助的。就是对我自己来说，我会更有信心可以去帮助那些人。
It's about making a whole of society effort to face up to any challenge, any adversity, and that crisis may be a natural disaster or a man-made crisis. And what we've seen through our work is that over 10,000 people have shown up and devoted their personal time, have brought their families, all to learn useful skills that can help them help themselves and help each other and help their communities in times of need.
我觉得以这些年来看了哈，就是台湾在外交上面，事实上已经得到了国际上面相当程度的支持哈。尤其过往单纯的两岸关系只是台湾和中国的关系，现在已经成为国际上的议题了哈。所以将来我觉得不论是任何一组的候选人来胜选哈，我觉得他都应该要更去捍卫台湾的民主价值，而且他都必须要更选择跟国际上的盟友站在一起啊。我觉得这个是不管是谁当选都应该要去做的事情。
These are not uncharted waters, but whoever wins must steer through a geopolitical storm delicately.
Last November, the Taiwan issue was high on the agenda during a meeting between superpowers US and China. US President Joe Biden warned Beijing not to interfere in the island's presidential election, while his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping reiterated that reunification is unstoppable. The outcome of the polls will be closely watched for its potential impact on global order.
I've come to Xiamen, a southern Chinese coastal city just across from Taiwan's outlying Kinmen Islands.
Walking along this beach, you really get a sense of how close the Taiwanese Kinmen Islands are. At its closest point, it's less than 2 kilometers away from China. And this beach has attracted groups of Chinese tourists who are curious to see what's on the other side. Next to the beach, you can see a gigantic signboard erected. It says, "One country, two systems to unify China." President Xi Jinping has vowed to build up China's military into a great wall of steel to defend the country's sovereignty. China has always maintained that Taiwan is an inalienable part of its territory, and nowhere is this clearer than in Fujian province, where a series of measures have been proposed to make it easier for Taiwanese to settle down, to buy a home, to find employment, and get medical insurance, all in a bid to further integrate Taiwan and Fujian.
24-year-old Chen Boyuan is one of many Taiwanese youths who have come to mainland China to study. His time in China has changed his perceptions of the communist country that he ended up becoming a loud advocate of cross-strait reunification through video logs and even songs that he's written and performed himself.
我是中国人，当然要吃中国的菜，不是中国人也给你感受中国的爱，相信中国人都很团结，每个人都想看，都是中国人，不管身处哪边的海峡两岸。自从我有这些感受的时候，我跟他们讲，他们都还跟我说啊，你是不是被洗脑啊？你是不是怎样？你真的被洗脑了？他们都这样跟我说。我甚至就是在台湾发布了很多就是两岸融合这些内容。 就是还有很多人就是会来抨击我。
Despite the criticisms, Chen felt his experience studying in China is invaluable. He said Taiwanese youths need more exposure to truly understand China before passing judgment themselves. The integration plan unveiled by the Chinese State Council is part of China's long-standing strategy to foster closer ties with the Taiwan compatriots.
我们对台湾当局对台湾搞台独的人，我们是 打压，但是我们对台湾人民，我们是采取软的一手，就一手大棒，一手胡萝卜，胡萝卜是在那就是要这个与会促融嘛，这个落实惠台政策。
When it's put to him that many Taiwanese oppose reunification after seeing how Hong Kong is governed under the one country, two systems principle, Professor Lee suggests there is room for negotiation.
一国不能谈，两制是可以谈，里面的内容多少都可以谈而且 我们自己也在不断的在调整，在不断的那个变化，根据自己将来统一的方式来决定嘛。如果是和平统一，当然是可以谈如果是非和平统一的方式来，或者是其他各种和平跟非和平综合的方式来解决问题的话，可能内容又有不太一样。
Beijing has framed the Taiwan elections as a choice between war and peace. The Taiwanese business community is most worried about what is at stake, particularly with China threatening to suspend its only free trade agreement with Taiwan.
因为我们两岸都有公司嘛，在台湾也好，在大陆也好，都会有一定的这个影响。因为货品的往来，跟政治它有点息息相关。那我们从这个政策层面，不管两岸的选举怎么样，在政府的层面，就是在大陆政府的层面，它一直是鼓励两岸的货物必须畅通。
In December, China concluded a months-long investigation into Taiwan's alleged trade restrictions on Chinese products under the Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement, or ECFA. Beijing announced that those restrictions constitute trade barriers and suspended tariff reductions of some Taiwanese imports under the ECFA from January 1st.
November. President Joe Biden and Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping shaking hands on US soil in San Francisco.
What's your message to China today?
A year of tensions between the world's largest economies, capped with the two men reiterating their responsibility to prevent the relationship descending into conflict, confrontation, or even a new Cold War. At the heart of many of these potential disputes, Taiwan. On this, the Americans have maintained a one China principle, a key cornerstone of Sino-US ties. The idea being that Washington recognizes Beijing, but not officially Taipei. The People's Republic of China is deemed the single sovereign state and sole government.
The American position on Taiwan is clear. President Biden said at his press conference in California that our policy hasn't changed. And he said the policy of all American presidents going back a half century. It's not changed.
That position is not, however, an endorsement of China's legitimacy. The US still sees Taiwan as a strategic, economic and security partner. It maintains what it calls a robust relationship with the territory, including arms sales worth some $4 billion for the past 2 years, trade totaling $160 billion in 2022, and trips. Former House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited the island in 2022, and current Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen met Pelosi's successor Kevin McCarthy months later in California, moves that angered China, which responded with extensive military drills. Yet this could all change after the election.
The biggest thing that people in the U.S., the policymakers, worry about is that Taiwan will flip suddenly. And we will find ourselves looking at Taiwan, which has either been enticed into a much closer relationship with the PRC, or it will be coerced into a much closer relationship with Beijing. That sudden flip is the thing that we really worry about a lot.
Victory for the Kuomintang's Hou Yu-ih, China's preferred contender, may deliver just that, putting a serious strain on the delicate status quo. Ko Wen-je of the Taiwan's People Party, who like Hou came to the United States last year, is also keen to engage China, whereas the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's William Lai, effectively the continuation candidate, wishes to continue Tsai's diplomatic path. Whilst both the Trump and Biden administrations have provided solid support for the DPP government, the White House isn't formally backing any one party or candidate this time round. Washington is far from indifferent about what comes next. It's just the thinking here is that it would seem imprudent to offer an endorsement, either overtly or tacitly, given the race remains very much in the balance. And, of course, the US president would have to work with whichever winner the Taiwanese people pick. But in a region so volatile, charged, sensitive, any result may leave relations with China once again fraught.
My expectation would be that if the KMT wins, the PRC will perceive that to have happened in spite of the United States. And if the DPP wins, the PRC will perceive that to have happened with the connivance of the United States. So either way, the U.S. is somehow in the doghouse, whatever the outcome may be.
One of these men will be Taiwan's leader later this week. Across the Pacific, trepidation and wariness as the US waits to find out which.